Hi, I'm Christine Herman of Herman's Quality Meat Shop in Newark, Delaware. Welcome to my shop. We're going to be talking about St. Patrick's Day and some of the delicious foods that go along with it. Are you ready? St. Patrick's Day is one of those holidays that are celebrated with a variety of foods, from sausage to corned beef and cabbage and some different types of lamb. And we're going to talk about some of those. So here we are, right in front of me is one of our savory sausages, bangers, and it's typically served with mashed potatoes. You probably have heard the expression bangers and mash, and our bangers are amazing, and they're excellent when they're served with mashed potatoes, or you can even have them for breakfast. And I have to say, here I am, the Italian girl, dressed in green, working in a German shop, making Irish sausage. Why not, right? It all works. The other recipe that I want to share with you, an item that I want to talk to you about, is corned beef and cabbage. And this is a really popular item at St. Patrick's Day. And I highly recommend a corned beef brisket that is the brisket portion rather than another cut. And I say that particularly because there are other cuts that are used that are corned. And corned is a process that is like a brining process. And you've probably heard of brining turkey. Well, this is sort of the same type of thing with the raw beef. And I'm going to show you in this container here that I have what a brined or a corned beef looks like, and you probably have seen this before. Oftentimes it'll come with the seasoning pack. You can use that, or you can use some of the ingredients that I'm going to suggest. So really simply, it's a very easy recipe, is taking your corned beef and putting it in a Dutch oven or a roasting pan with some water and adding some vegetables, which I have some here. We'll talk about the cabbage in a minute. Some carrots and celery, and some onion. Cut up your onion, some potatoes, Baker's or red potatoes, a little bit of garlic, and some peppercorns. And put them in a pot, enough water to cover, and either bake it in the oven or on a stovetop again. You want it to boil. And if you've ever heard of the term fork tender, when you stick the fork in it and it just slides out, then you know that it's done. But just before that, maybe after about an hour of cooking time, you want to cut up your cabbage, drop some cabbage into the pot, and let that finish cooking at the end. And you have a delicious meal. And I have here, voila, a piece that I have cooked myself. And I'm going to show you how to cut it. Because if you cut it incorrectly, it'll be tough and chewy, and then you'll really be upset. So I don't know if the camera can zoom in here, but I'm going to try and show you this way. If you can see the lines or what's called the grain going this way, we're going to cut against that. And we're going to take our knife and we're going to cut slowly and carefully into nice thin slices. And what I'm doing is actually just straightening it out so I have a nice slice here. So I can go straight across, and you can see, and honestly, if I were cutting this for myself, I would turn the meat around, but I'm doing this so that you can hopefully see it. And this is a little thicker, but for a dinner slice, that would be just sufficient. And again, there you have it. And you can see that it'll just pull nice apart like that, and it'll be tender and delicious. I would love to have some of this right now, but I'm going to spare me and you that. So corned beef and cabbage. One of my mother-in-law's favorite recipes to cook, and my father absolutely loved it. And I was fortunate enough that my parents and my in-laws were best friends. So St. Patrick's Day was one of those fun holidays that we got to spend some time together and enjoy. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to rearrange this for a second and just leave that there. One of the other popular foods at St. Patrick's Day is lamb. And here at Herman's, we get fresh lamb in, and this is a portion of the shoulder that I'm going to do a little cutting demonstration for you. But we get fresh lamb, and it's usually from New York or New Jersey, and it is never frozen, as I said, and is never imported. And we usually get either portions or whole lamb. And a whole lamb that we get is usually around 60 pounds, give or take 5 or so pounds. And I'm just going to do a little bit of demonstrating of how well we trim our lamb here and clean it up. And lamb to work with is a very delicate piece of meat because it is so much smaller than beef. And pardon me if I don't look up all the time, but like this I would discard because there's nothing there that's usable. There's a lot of sinew and fat that we discard, like gooey stuff like that you don't want. And what it's about in this process is about actually how I train is about finding the seams and extracting the meat from there. So what I'm doing, it's sort of hard to see because I have to be able to see it myself, is I'm actually physically going where the fat and the membranes are and just pulling this apart. And there's a bone in here that I'm going to work around. And get this out. And let's see what I can come up with here for you. And just give you an idea how well we trim our meats here. We have sometimes our customers actually complain because our meat is so lean that they have to cook it differently. And that's not such a bad thing, really, if you think about it. Because we don't like to sell you and have you pay for a lot of fat that just dissolves when you cook it or doesn't add the flavor and the value to what you're making. And there we go. Here's a piece right here. So that doesn't look like a whole lot. Oh yeah, here you go. This is something I want to share with you. You always want to be mindful, especially if you buy your meat somewhere that isn't as careful as we are. I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to show you something. I'm going to kind of show this right to the camera. Here's a piece of fat, and this little pink thing right there, kind of grayish pink, that's actually a gland. And if you ever see that in any of your meat, take a look at that. That's a gland. That's gross. You don't ever want to eat that. And you definitely don't want to cook it either because it will taint the flavor of your meat. So for right now, I'm going to remove that and discard it to the side. So I would take some of these pieces, and I'm just going to take this one piece. I'm not going to spend all night working on this in front of you, but I'm going to take another knife, and I'm going to clean this up a little bit and just give you an idea of how nicely we trim. And again, you can see some of that gooey stuff there that we don't want in our meat. And two of the main recipes that I think that we sell a lot of at St. Patrick's Day is lamb stew and also ground lamb for shepherd's pie. So here's just one little piece that would make an excellent piece of stew. Cut that, and there you have it. There's a little bit of fat on there, not a whole lot. And this is another nice piece here also. My knife isn't cooperating tonight, but I can handle that. We'll do a demonstration on how to sharpen your knife another time. So you can see there's a little bit of fat left on here, but not a whole lot. This actually is the flank steak of the lamb. Actually, that's not true because this isn't the flank area. Looks like the flank steak, but this is part of the shoulder. Get my back straight. Anyway, so that little bit of fat's not going to hurt, so I'm just going to cut that into some nice pieces, and then you would have some nice pieces of lamb stew, just like that. And these little flecks of fat in there would just melt away and add delicious flavor to your stew. And typically lamb stew is made with, again, carrots, celery, onions, and some savory seasonings. So that's just a little typical idea of how to make lamb stew. And what I would do with some of these other pieces is I would clean them up like so, and I would take away all that fat. And I would take this piece of meat right here, which isn't quite as desirable for stew. And like this little guy here, that tiny little piece of meat, I'm going to set this aside in a pile. A little bit of fat won't hurt. I'm going to set it aside in another pile, and we're going to use that to make our ground lamb. And ground lamb at our store is also very lean and flavorful because, again, it comes from all of the trimmings from throughout the lamb. So not only parts of the shoulder, but also when we trim up a leg of lamb, or we trim up the loin, when we make loin chops, or when we trim up rib chops. We'll get pieces of lamb that we will, and this piece, as I said, is ideal for grinding, and it makes for a little less expensive cut of meat. So that would be another pile that we would collect and add to and use for our grinding lamb, as I said. And then this would be some nice stew cubes. And I could take this apart, but it would take me, again, a little while to do that, and I don't need to take up time on the video to do that. Maybe another time. But this is the shoulder blade is in here, and another bone. So there you have it. And I'm just going to keep trimming because I feel like talking to you and telling you a story. Because not every piece of meat is affordable. And I recognize that. And I was talking to a customer the other day, and we were talking about how she was working on feeding her family on a budget. And we all know that right now times are such that we need to be mindful of our budget. And of course, as I was mentioning earlier, ground lamb is a little less expensive than stew meat, and you can see why based upon where it comes from in the animal and the quality that we use. And anyway, I was talking with her about, some ideas about saving some money and buying, still being able to shop here. And she had purchased a meat order. And she said, I have a story to tell you, Chris. I said, oh, what is that? She said, well, in trying to save money, my husband and I decided that, mornings are a rush. And she said, I just couldn't figure out how to get out the door with the kids, getting to school, getting them to daycare, getting lunches and breakfast, and I still like my cup of coffee. And I used to go to this little cafe down the street and pick up coffee on my way to work. Well, talked to my husband and I said, honey, we really need to cut the budget, save some time in the morning, and buy a coffee maker because I can't do all of this at once. Because her husband's schedule didn't allow him to take care of the kids. She needed to do that. So she said, I think the coffee maker is really important. So he said, okay, great idea. So they figured out their nighttime routine. They would set up lunches for the next day, and they would set up the coffee maker. And I'm getting to a point, trust me on this one. And it worked. In the morning, make the coffee, out the door, everybody was happy. And they were saving money because they had their own coffee. Simple story. However, this one morning, she's got the coffee, got the kids, out the door, on time, sitting in front of her computer for her 8 o'clock Zoom meeting. Bam. She's just happy. She's drinking her coffee and takes a sip. Oh. There's something in my mouth. What? She said, Chris, I didn't know what it was. And I was on a Zoom meeting. I didn't know what to do. So I kind of excused myself, coughed into my hand, and I looked down, and there was a piece of my sponge. My sponge. I didn't know how to compose myself, but I did and got back to my Zoom meeting, put my coffee aside, and finished my day. And I said, well, that's sort of gross, but thanks for sharing. She said, yeah, I knew. I thought I could share that with you. I didn't know quite what to do with myself. I said, well, it brings me to remind you, my customers, that we need to be very mindful in our kitchen about our cleaning products and our cleaning tools that we use. And that, I know that sounds like a little winded story, but it is a true story, brings me to the sponge, Exhibit A. Here's a brand new sponge, okay? Got a nice, smooth surface, right? After using it for a while, it starts to look like this. And you're wondering, yeah, no big deal, mine does too. Well, this is what happens. And where does that go? Does it end up in your coffee cup? Does it end up in your food? Something to think about. So my kitchen tip for today is to be really mindful of your sponges and your washcloths. You say, well, I use a washcloth, no big deal. Well, washcloths are great. I don't always like using a washcloth because they start to smell. And ew, you don't want your countertops or your dishes to smell like a dirty dishcloth. What do? Well, one of the tips that I have learned from another customer of mine is put it in a bowl of cold water and a little drop of bleach. And that, after about 15 minutes, rinse it, is a great way to freshen it up. And of course, after washing it, you should wash it frequently or every day, or have a couple of them on hand. Usually they come in packs of 4 or 6 or whatever. But anyway, and the same thing with your sponge. I have a tendency to put mine in the dishwasher on the top rack a couple times a week maybe, and then toss it and get a new one, because you don't want to find pieces of your sponge in your coffee cup or anywhere else. I hope that was a helpful tip. I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you. No matter how you celebrate St. Patrick's Day, whether you're making bangers and mashed potatoes, corned beef and cabbage, or another variety of corned beef, whether we make it or you make it yourself, or lamb. We have fresh lamb, we have lamb stew cubes, we have ground lamb for shepherd's pie. Think of Herman's, and we can help you with whatever meal you prefer. We hope that you will like our page, subscribe to our channel, and join our family. We hope to see you again soon. Christine Herman and staff.